agenda today, but we're gonna mix the agenda up literally with moving a case to the front of the line. And so I'm gonna move the Old Hickory Boulevard case up to number 1 and the Cato case back to number 2 to wait for the legal representation to show up. But before we get into that, we've got some business to take care of. And the first thing I'd like to do is that I've got someone new on my left that you haven't seen in a while, and that's Miss Hayes, Miss Kimberly Hayes. Ms. Hayes, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself? I know you've been at Metro Water Services for a long time.
I have been at Metro Water Services for 20 years as of February of this year.
Wow.
So I oversee the permitting process for new infill single-family residential. So we do the plans review, we do all of the inspections, so we do closeouts, complaints, anything related to single-family residential we do. So, but no need to get used to my face. I am Logan's supervisor, and I am in his stead while he is on paternity leave. 3 weeks down and 3 weeks to go. So we do want to congratulate him. His baby was born 3 weeks ago, May 15th. Baby Sophia at 10 pounds, 11 ounces, but they are doing well. They are doing very, very well and getting adjusted. So this is baby number 3 for him. So they've been in the driver's seat for a little while. So, but this is the first girl. So they're excited.
Well, Logan, I know you're watching because you know, so congrats, and look forward to having you back. But in the meantime, we're happy to have Ms. Hayes.
Thank you.
We also have some new representation, well, at least temporarily on the legal side of things. Is there an update here that we could share, Tara, of your new and greener and spongier pastures at Metro Water?
Yeah, thanks. So I've taken a position with Metro Water Services, so now I'm going to be Metro Water Services staff. So I'm joining all these excellent people who routinely give you advice with these cases and look at these cases before they come to you. But the great and better news is that you have great person here in my stead who is Laura Fox, who was my supervisor at Metro Legal, and is an amazing person and just amazing staff, Metro Legal attorney, and has been there for, I'll let her tell more about herself, has been there for how many years? 25, just 25. So she's everything that I know, or most of the things I know, definitely tripled, and any of the hard questions I ever had to answer came through Laura as well. So she's going to be awesome for you guys. And then do you want to talk about, I guess it's just, she's going to be here for probably a couple months until we can sort of figure out how to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, I'm Laura Fox. I'm looking forward to working with you today and for the next few months. And we're hiring someone who's going to have this position. And so you'll be lucky. You'll have Tara will continue to come to your meetings. And you'll have a new attorney who will get up to speed as well.
Wonderful. Welcome, Ms. Fox. And Tara, I'm glad that you won't really be leaving us. You will be leaving us here, but you'll still be at Metro Water Services, so we're glad to have you. All right. Well, with that, let's kick back off to our normal order of business. It's customary for us to review meeting minutes and decision letters. We have received decision letters now by email, and I'd like to encourage our commissioners to open those up and review now. And I think there's an email from Rebecca.
I can share my computer too while we review.
And I know we're also missing Mr. Steve Mishu. So I know, Mr. Mishu, you're probably watching. So hello out there, and we hope you recover quickly. Yeah, the letters weren't sent with our packet previously, so. right, got a motion to approve the minutes. Any,
And decision letter.
and decision letters? Okay, motion to approve minutes and decision letters. Is there a second? Seconded. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
None opposed.
And I do want to make one comment. I think the last meeting, we had some back-to-back meetings. And in our May meeting, I thought we approved those meeting minutes with a slight adjustment. I went back, and the adjustment that I thought we needed was actually the previous meeting. So with that being said, the meeting minutes could be approved as they were originally presented, with no need for that adjustment.
Perfect. Okay. All right.
Yeah, Logan emailed me and was like, Brittany, I think you're crazy. I can't find this anymore. And he was right.
And he was right.
He was right.
All right, well, all right, well, sounds good. Okay, moving on to the cases. Unless there's any other business, Ms. Hayes, before we get into cases? Okay, all right, well, let's jump in. Moving case number 2025, 00125461, Old Hickory Boulevard. If that group could come to the front here, and I'll let Ms. Hayes introduce the case.
Our opening statement to the applicant: if you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Stormwater Management Commission, you may appeal the decision by filing for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the Commission's decision. You are advised to seek the independent advice of legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been satisfied. This is Stormwater Management Commission Case 2025-00012, 5467 Old Hickory Boulevard. The inspector for this particular site is Development Services. The council district is District 1 with Joy Kimbrough. The applicant's request is to allow finished floor to remain at 506.8 above sea level, which is 3.7 feet above the base flood elevation of 503.1. The appellant is Jason Truss and Shannon Truss. The representative is Josh Lee of Thompson Burton.
Great, I'll give you a little rundown of how this will happen. You'll have 10 minutes to present. Well, I would ask if you would all introduce yourself and, sorry?
I failed to provide some info.
Okay, please.
Staff comments, stormwater staff comments. The current structure is adjacent to but not in the floodplain. The proposed addition is on the side of the house opposite the floodplain area. Codes did not provide any comment. Planning had no comments provided, and Greenways also had no comment.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you. If you would mind introducing yourselves and pressing the button to turn the mic red, and then I will start the 10-minute clock for you to present your case. I'll give you a 2-minute warning. We will close the presentation at that time, and then I'll open it up for public comment. Is there anybody here to speak in favor or against? I'll ask them to come to the podium, and they'll have 2 minutes to speak. We'll reserve some of your time that's remaining for your presentation to provide a response. They'll close public hearing and then open it up to the commissioners for deliberation, and we may have some questions back and forth for you. So, does that make sense? Okay. All right, great. With that, I'll let you introduce yourself, and we'll hear your case.
Thank you very much. It's great to see everyone. I'm Josh Lee with Thompson Burton, 1801 West End, legal representative for this case. We've got the owners and architect here, and we'll go through their introductions.
I'm Shannon Truss, one of the owners.
Hi, Jason Truss, homeowner.
And I'm Emily Saylor, the architect.
So that's our team here, and really we're here to talk to you all today about a Post-it note. Right, this is a 3.12 inches of difference between 4 feet above the flood elevation and the current elevation of the home. The materials are a little bit confusing, and I just want to explain that for just a moment, in that there is 2 elevations in this home. The one that is about to be renovated, assuming we have approval, or if we have approval here, is the lower elevation towards the top, the north, on the map that's being displayed right now. That will be raised up to the rest of the elevation, which is 506.84, as was mentioned in the staff comments. So really, we're talking about the difference between 506.84 and 507.1, a difference of 3.12 inches. So we're seeking a variance in this case. As mentioned in the comments, this is an area that is adjacent to, the structure is adjacent to the floodplain. The proposed renovation is furthest away from the closest point of the floodplain. And, you know, because of this increase in that level, we're actually going to make the structure more compliant with the flood regulations, not less compliant. And that leads us into our points here that we've referenced in our memo to the committee. And I have extra copies if anyone desires one. But under the requirements for variances, we feel like we meet those requirements. We've submitted the minimum necessary request. This is not a full renovation of the structure. It is a modest addition to the home, renovating a portion and then adding a small portion onto the back. And we have our homeowners and architect to describe any of that if necessary. And, you know, as you can imagine, this is justified by good cause and exceptional hardship. The requirement to raise the entire structure 3.12 inches would be an exceptional hardship. And finally, the last criteria here, whether there would be an increased flood risk by this variance. And we would submit that it would definitely not be, as we are increasing the compliance in addition to doing this work furthest away from the floodplain area. So we'll keep it brief and are open for any questions that you all may have.
Great, thank you. Okay, is there anybody here in the audience to speak in favor or against? Raise your hand. Seeing none. Ms. Hayes, did we receive any letters or?
We did not.
Okay, all right. With that, I'll close public hearing and open it up for discussion. Just to kick it off, the site is not in the floodplain. It's adjacent to. Could staff provide some context of the definition of adjacent?
Sure. Our regulations contain a provision that describes, you know, a set of rules that you meet if you're in the floodplain. But there's also a clause in there that says if you're adjacent, if your parcel is adjacent to the floodplain. And that's just conservative regulation for a typical structure. Just because you're in the floodplain, your neighbor's in the floodplain and you're not, doesn't mean you have really any significantly less risk from the perspective of flood. But I think it's significant to this case that it is, because we're talking about 3 inches and we're talking about, you know, a case where the structure is totally out of the floodplain, because we also regulate, you know, if a structure touches the floodplain, then the structure is considered to be in the floodplain, and that's not the case for this. Fortunately, we're not dealing with things like floodways and floodway buffers and things like many of the cases that come before this board. All of that's across the road, and so that's the whole gist of protection related to being adjacent to the floodplain.
Okay, thank you.
Would this, if it matched the existing finished floor, would it have any adverse impact to the rating that we're concerned with?
No, I don't.
Some structures.
It's hard to tell. I mean, FEMA's changed those rules so much, and you know, FEMA doesn't even require an elevation certificate anymore to rate a structure. So don't ask me to explain how they do it. I couldn't even begin to touch that.
The reason I'm asking, I mean, I think that this would be an older home that's then have an addition to, so it's different than new construction that we've seen on past applications. And, it's, you know, flood-proofing the existing structure doesn't really work with 4 trusses, and I mean, it's just hard to do. So just trying to think if it's a consideration to even allow them to match versus, you know, worrying about adding one step. Because if it's outside any negative impact of ratings for the city and the community, then that's one consideration. Because if the primary residence, I'm not worried about the primary residence, but the primary residence were hit by that 4 feet delta, then I mean the addition's shot too.
And I don't want to, you know, please pleased to the owners. I'm not suggesting you have no flood risk, because you know, if you can see the creek from your house, you have flood risk, and you know how close you are to the floodplain. And floodplains, on occasion, are subject to change. We're in the process of changing the downtown flood level by 2 feet on the Cumberland River. So occasionally something like that would happen, and we want to just be mindful of that.
And if we may, just have one comment.
Yeah, just to address that, we actually can't see the creek from our house. Miss Annie's house across the street, the creek runs behind her property, so we can't see it. And then in between is the road and our ditch between the road and the fence.
And as you all know, we referenced in our memo to the board, there was significant rainfall and flooding that happened in April of this year. And that did not affect the structure of this property or anywhere nearby the property for the awareness of our owners.
Just a quick question. So to kind of further what Commissioner Fulmer was saying, so the existing structure kind of is what it is. It's an older structure. So that's one, to prove that because of the value renovation is what I'm hearing. But then really, to me, it's focused on the addition. Is that of whether or not to raise it or not? I mean.
Well, the addition square footage triggers the requirement for the existing non-compliance.
And so what I'm asking is.
And they're just asking for the existing to stay, but.
And then secondarily, they're building new, so whether or not they put a couple steps in and raise that or keep it at the existing.
And I don't even think they're asking for that. I was just thinking, is it even worth mandating?
No, I agree. I'm just saying, but isn't that elevation matters too?
Yeah, and my understanding is they already intend to comply with the new addition. The question before us, because of the trigger, do we have to raise the existing to meet the 4-foot elevation?
Okay, so
that's the variance
the addition will be at the elevation that complies, or?
The addition would meet the existing finished floor elevation, which is 3 inches below the 4 foot.
Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe I was confused. So
you could add the 3 inches to the new piece, and then it would comply with the 4 feet.
So the variance request is, so we don't have to raise the existing, but also we want a variance request to maintain the elevation. So even the new addition will be below the 4-foot requirement.
By 3 inches.
Yes, and you can imagine, just building an addition onto the home, having a level 4 and not having that step up would be preferable with a amount of space that we're talking about. But we've referenced in the memo, and we've referenced previously, if there are mitigating circumstances, mitigating efforts that the committee would prefer, we're here to evaluate those and would be glad to consider those.
And that's where I was going to, Jason. I mean, the addition is in the back of the house. It's out of the floodplain. How far away is the addition? Can we pull up the site plan that's got do we have a site plan with the addition shown?
I mean, all those things coupled with the fact that if it ever did get up that high, then they're having to move out anyway. The whole house. So this is kind of one of those gray areas where it's not a just lockstep hardship, but it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, this is, we look at these cases most of the cases that we deal with that have this elevation issue are in the floodplain. This is out of the floodplain. I'm inclined to support, but I'm happy to hear others. Nathan, you have anything? Or Janie?
Sorry, my question is, why not just put in one step and raise that? I mean, that helps protect your investment to elevate that to the 4 foot as opposed to 3.
And a negligible
the 3
amount.
inches. It's a negligible amount, the 3 inches. I understand wanting that you could have like just one step, and that would, really reduce the flood risk there.
But I think, just to confirm what we've all been discussing, it's not in the floodplain. It's adjacent to the floodplain.
Yeah.
So it's not even.
I saw a family of 6 on that application.
Yeah.
Your kids run around tripping.
Yeah.
We have multiple steps. I'm in the.
Yeah,
They are adults.
They're adults, but we also, I know Shannon's tired of moving. So we'd love to retire and it sounds morbid, but die in this house. So having a 3-inch lip to step into the addition, if we get old enough, seems like that would be,
We can do it now.
yeah.
Yeah, and if this was in the floodplain, I think we'd be more hardened on that position of getting it 4 feet, but I think we're working towards a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
All right, a motion in a second. All right, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, seeing none, motion carries. You did.
It's all about preventing
Yeah.
flood risk.
It's all right. All right, yep, you got it. All right, thank you.
We're seeing more incidents.
All right, next case, Cato Road, 4324 Cato Road. If you come up to the top here and we'll get you heard. I know these two have been here time and time again, so we'll let Kimberly introduce the case. Well, let me let Kimberly do her.
For the record, we went fast on that, so Doug couldn't bill more for having to sit here since he was supposed to be first on the agenda.
That's it.
Opening statement to applicant. If you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Stormwater Management Commission, you may appeal the decision by filing for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the commission's decision. You are advised to seek the independent advice of legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been satisfied. This is case number 2025-00011, 4324 Cato Road. The inspector is Development Services. This is Council District 1, Joy Kimbrough. The request is to allow an unpermitted parking pad to remain within the floodway of Eaton's Creek, allowance of a green infrastructure control practice within the floodway. The appellant is Jonathan Cone, being represented by Doug Sloan. The representative is Michael Garrigan of Dell & Associates. Comments, Stormwater staff, if a site variance is approved, staff would propose that the site mitigation plan focus on improving naturalization of the parcel floodway by creating planting areas. Codes did not provide any comment. Planning did not provide any comment. Greenways also did not have any comment.
Great, and I think the applicant had a handout that we'll pass around. And with that, I'll let the applicant introduce themselves and hear the case.
Thank you. My name is Doug Sloan. I'm with Thompson Burke.
There we go. Michael Garrigan with Dell & Associates.
Thank you for your time this morning. This is an unusual case, and I know everybody says that every time they come in front of y'all. But our client purchased this property, and upon purchasing it, discovered that he didn't have a use and occupancy permit. Sought the use and occupancy permit, and then that's when Stormwater came out, as they should, and looked at it and said, well, you've got several problems. And that was about a year ago. And over the last year, our client has continued to try and get the use and occupancy permit squared away. Prior to discovering that, my client hired a contractor and requested the contractor build a pickleball court in the backyard. They went to codes, and what I've handed out to you today, or y'all have passed around today, is an email exchange where his contractor reached out to the codes help desk to ask, do we need a permit to build this outside? And was told, no, you don't need a permit. So I want to, first of all, highlight, because I know so often you have people who come in front of you and sin and ask for forgiveness, right? And that's not the case here. This is where this gentleman, one, purchased a house that he thought he was ready to move into. Later found out he was not. It was not able to be permitted to move into. Hired a contractor to try and put a pickleball court in his backyard. So they thought he was doing the right thing. Contractor went to go ask for Metro for what permits they need and was told they didn't need one. Now, those of us, I've worked in Metro for 20 years. And so I know that when you go ask codes, that doesn't mean that you've asked everybody. But I think the average citizen expects that the codes help desk, when you go to ask what permits you need, should be able to tell you, you may not need a building permit, but given where you are, you might want to go talk to Stormwater before you start construction. I think that's a level of service they should expect. Now, should I or Mr. Garrigan expect that? Absolutely not. We should know better. And one quick thing that I wanted to add was the strict application of our regulations, regardless of which one it is, codes, stormwater, water, sewer, whatever it might be. That's done by the administration. That's done by the departments. The boards and commissions, in great part, exist to give equity to our citizens when the strict application of those guidelines produce an unjust result. That's a great part of what the boards and the commissions do. When I was the planning director, I hated for somebody to come in front of me and tell me what my job was. I am not trying to do that. I am trying to just highlight that portion of what the boards and the commissions do for our community. Because I think this is a case where you have a property owner who tried to do the right thing and didn't get hit once, but twice, and now a year later, still has not been able to relocate to this home. And so for that reason, we're really asking for equity here. We've requested it be able to stay, one, because of the amount of cost he's already spent in placing it there, but it's a 6-bedroom house as well. And so he can use it for overflow parking, and we'd rather do that than tear it out. We've removed the fencing that was all the way around it. We've removed the lights that were on it. So any vertical structures around the pad have been removed, so there are no obstructions for the water. And then I'm going to turn it over to Michael to talk about what mitigation efforts have been made as well.
Thank you, Doug. Again, it's Michael Garrigan with Dell & Associates. One other thing I wanted to point out is there were some other features on the property that were there when our client purchased it. They're in the photos packet. There was you can actually see it. That's how big it is in that aerial. A large Rocky Top sign, a part of the patio that had a gazebo on it, a fire pit, and I think a swing set. Those have all been removed at our client's expense. Part of the patio that was in the floodway, I'm sorry, that housed the gazebo, there it is. So the pickleball court parking pad, from a mitigation standpoint, it's you got to get creative from a stormwater standpoint, because infiltration measures aren't really going to work. Anything you dig a deep hole, it's just going to stay full. So what we tried to do is come up with an idea for the pickleball court that would be like a closed system that wouldn't, be damaged if it was inundated, and would not rely on infiltration in a soggy soil. So we've got a cistern that catches little swells around either side of the pickleball court into a couple of inlets that feed the cistern, with the idea to utilize that water to irrigate the existing flower beds for the house, as well as any mitigation measures. The landscape mitigation, there's some glaring bare spots both on the creek as well as the trib that runs along Cato Road. Well, the trib along Cato Road is completely bare, and there's a couple of pretty obvious bare spots along the creek that we plan to mitigate with the native tree species, and listening to Kimberly's staff comments. I'm just kind of glancing at my drawing here. The two items I'm about to reference are not currently in the plan, but I would put them in the record. The bottom triangular area on the southern side of the property, where right in there, that could be turned into a huge native habitat area through plantings and native grasses and things of that nature, and then no mow and maintenance in that area. And then we would also offer up probably a 25 to 50 foot strip. I say 25 to 50 because the pickleball court does get probably about 20 foot from the bank of the creek. But outside of that, it could be a 50-foot strip along the creek that's currently mowed and maintained that we would be in agreement to sign and leave that as a no mowing, no maintenance zone. Creating, although it's not a floodway buffer, it would be a stream buffer that would then be created where it doesn't exist.
Okay, does that conclude the presentation?
Yes, sir.
All right, nobody here left, so nobody to speak. Any letters or?
No letters in opposition or favor, but we, as staff, we do have to provide a historical context. It is unrelated but related because, as Doug has said, they still do not have a UNO, and there's a reason why we don't have a UNO. So there was a contractor or builder who Doug's client purchased a house from, and they started this as a renovation permit. It was supposed to be interior renovation, no change to building footprint, no change to the roof line. So somewhere along the line, there was the issuance of a UNO, but the UNO got revoked. And the UNO was revoked because an entire second story was put on the structure. So there's been a lot of dialogue over the past year on how to correctly identify this site, if buffers apply, if buffers didn't apply. Somewhere along the line, I think it was decided that buffers did not apply. Tara, you can speak to this, or Rebecca. That's why we needed Steve here today.
He's watching.
Yeah.
He is watching. So as a result of that, there had to be an addition permit to be started. So there's now an open addition permit to allow some floodplain compliance things to be done. That's outside of this, but it is working with the owner and the builder to still bring the house up into compliance with flood vents and other things. So Roger, do you have anything else you want to provide with that, or Tara? Okay.
So an interior renovation permit doesn't trigger buffers, but an addition permit would have.
I don't think it was aware that it was going to be a second story.
Right.
Per the scope.
Right. Contractor went rogue. All right.
So today is about the concrete pad and the mitigation for the concrete pad. However, there's other items, it sounds like, as you were going through removing the patio and there was a big fence put in and those sorts of things, I was curious how that related to getting a UNO, but that's going to be a separate thing that comes before the commission later. But I guess I'm trying to understand why we're talking about a concrete pad today, if there's a lot larger issues to get a UNO down the road that may come. And if we're talking about mitigation for that, it just seems like an odd sequence of events.
Per discussion with staff, it was decided that the buffers did not apply. And based on what was performed, and only, so what we're dealing with is just a pad that is now in the floodway. If it was something that had been requested, like Doug had said, we would not have approved it, but it has been there. They have, I guess, removed it from being a pickleball court to being a parking pad. So that's what's before us.
I think it's kind of like if they had requested that gazebo to stay, then there'd be more stuff like that previous similar situation in the floodway. They got denied and required to be removed. They just went ahead, y'all have already removed the gazebo.
That's correct.
And so this is kind of a separate.
The out of compliance items that the original builder did have been removed. The other items, and again, I want to make it very clear, Doug, nor myself, nor our client, or, well, we weren't even involved, but nobody was aware of any of the issues at hand, the flood vents, but we're working with our owner to get those put in correctly, raising of the HVAC equipment. All those items will be on a staff level, but they're in the process.
Our client has also hired an excellent attorney to address the purchase issue.
So I just want to say, looking at this case, I do want to state out loud, I understand the argument as a commission, and in many cases, certain commissions were looking to avoid unjust results, but in this commission, we have granted limited authority and have criteria that we have to follow when granting variances or appeals. That can lead to unjust results sometimes, based on the constraints that we have that we look at. In this particular case, I know we're calling it a parking pad, but ultimately this looks like a recreational court from what I'm seeing in a floodway. I appreciate that the other non-compliant aspects have been removed, but I don't really see an undue hardship to keep a recreational court in a floodway here. And in addition, and I appreciate that somebody reached out to the permit desk, but if I'm looking at this email, I don't necessarily think the help desk was wrong if somebody is asking, do I need a permit simply for a concrete pad? They needed a variance to be able to do it. And without more information, exactly where that would be located, I understand the argument here, but in this particular case, I don't necessarily see an undue hardship.
I think the only difference or question in my mind regarding that is, I don't know what the process is for, reaching out to the help desk and then I would assume they would punch in and it does, or you should, it looks like you need further information. I don't know what that process is. It seems like that would be a normal one, and if you reach out to the help desk and get that response, I do see the question, I guess, in how you proceed on some of that.
Yeah, I think the reaching out completely changes everything on this, and this is probably triggering some trauma for Kimberly because so many driveways get built without a permit. I mean, that need them. I mean, just any impervious area needs some sort of sign off, and this would have been stopped, and they probably wouldn't have built it. But if there's no buffers that were triggered by the renovation, and we've got an opportunity to clip that triangle and get 6X buffer that's not there, then if they had never reached out, I think it goes away. Since they reached out, I think it's worth letting it stay if we get all that buffer. Because if I'm the creek, that has a lot more value than, any contaminated rainfall that might fall on that little bit of pickleball court.
I would agree. Rebecca, can you pull up the proposed plan, mitigation plan? And I think the applicant had identified 2 additional components. And I'll ask Mr. Garrigan to help us understand that a little bit better now that we have it on our screens in front of us.
Yes, I'm kind of sketching it.
And give us the approximate area of the pad. How many square feet are we talking?
The pad is 4,000 square feet, 4,087 square feet.
Okay.
The triangular area that I'm kind of at least thinking in the limits of it, I would say, if you see the southern portion of the 2 trees, go north, right there. Right there seems like a good striking line, so to speak. Yeah. So that entire triangle to the south, native, some wildflowers, some switchgrasses, things of that nature, to just kind of grow that up into a native area in addition to, of course, the trees. And then for the no mowing and maintenance, extending north, just a strip paralleling right there, it would probably extend a little bit past that corner. That's the closest.
Well, if there's no buffer enacted, then there's no variance needed for that unless you ever applied for an addition permit later that triggered buffers. If the renovation permit was deemed to not trigger buffers
for
mowing and maintenance requests, I don't know.
Right, I guess that would just be a part of the mitigation offer is to create a buffer.
Well, yeah, on the triangular section to the south. I don't think you have to ask for a variance to mow and maintain.
To go further north.
But that way, all that roadway water will go through a real buffer.
Well, I think he was saying in addition, not that they were asking for the variance, but just a little bit more. He was like, they're willing to do that. So it would create more. I will point out, I don't know if this is obvious to everybody, but I will say that triangle's lower in elevation, so it is helpful. I think if it's backing up to create the no-mow scenario in that corner as well.
There's also a lot of sheet flow from the north that enters into the creek before the triangle, so creating a no-mow maintenance strip parallel to the bank would be very beneficial for that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because it's going to be one of my questions. I see the trees noted on the plan and the additional ones. I don't see on the plan we have the no-mow and the kind of revegetation, because I do think, given what we've seen on the aerial and the conditions that you've described, I think that would be needed really to kind of stabilize that. I mean, the trees will provide some long-term benefit, no doubt, but I think having that as a no-mow and revegetating it in a little bit different way, I think would be advantageous long-term. So is that, I think that's a great idea. I guess I'm asking,
Those two items we would offer them as conditions if approved and then to be documented through a revised plan with staff.
Okay.
That's about right.
Were you looking for the distance from the top of bank to the corner? Oh. Are you looking for this triangular area that they're proposing as additional? Okay. This one?
Yeah, about right there. See that tree to the right on the property line? The contract, yeah, just getting an area of
about 6,000.
I mean, that's a pretty large area of buffer.
I see 17,000.
Condition of some sort of additional buffer down there.
And to clarify, Mr. Garrigan, were you proposing that it would be a no-mow area, or were you proposing native species that would be maintained?
Both. It would be, at least what I'm envisioning is just wildflower, switchgrass, planted, and then left
And then
alone.
left, okay.
And is that the area or south of that or where
That's
Maybe the
about,
midpoint of that 4223 property, or,
that's about right.
Is that tree line along the street still there? It doesn't show up in the survey, is what I'm asking. but
If you
it's
do the
still-
street view, you can see it.
It's still there.
It's still there.
So circling back to Commissioner Simpson's comments about hardship, like this is, seems pretty easy, but then also is a little bit complicated because, the hardship is that, I'm struggling with the hardship. Is the hardship the cost to remove the pad, or is the hardship that information was not properly given as to what was required to permit and build the pad? So what are you, help me understand, please, the hardship that you think is applicable here?
Well, it is one, the hardship in part is certainly because of the information that they were given, the incorrect information that they were given by codes, and the costs as well. But a parking pad is a structure that is permitted in the buffer. So that's one of the reasons why we're asking for it as a parking pad instead of a pickleball court or a tennis court. So yeah, those are our hardships, and specifically why we're asking for it to be approved as a parking pad.
And if it wasn't a parking pad, it wouldn't even be able to come before us for a variance request, correct?
Correct.
And
But like
Let
the
me ask-
basketball goal in my driveway, I'm not sure there's a distinction physically.
And I guess one question, you're saying that the information that the contractor was given was incorrect, but I guess I just would like some clarification. Generally, do you need a permit for a concrete pad that's below 6 inches? Is that incorrect information, or were they just maybe not given all of the information?
if you ask codes, you need a permit to replace 100 square feet of sheetrock. I mean, I think it's bad information.
Well, and the address was attached, so typically, I would assume best practice would be to pull up that and turn on. I don't.
I think this is a lesson learned. I think that they should have to get a stormwater, an infill permit. But codes gets confused because if you're not building a building or a structure, they say, I can't give you a building permit.
Well,
But that's where all these other departments are triggered. And so when codes, who monitors and assigns everybody that should sign off on a permit, says you don't need a permit, this is a 931 area codes out of town contractor.
So if this weren't in the floodway, if this were not in a buffer, they
wouldn't
still would have
matter.
had to have obtained a permit if it was on a piece of real property that has no,
It's debatable because technically, yeah, on an infill permit, if you add more than 800 square feet, you need a permit unless you meet exemption criteria, which you have to then prove you meet the exemption criteria. So I think this is a lesson learned.
Except for that wasn't what they were told.
Yeah, if I were to email codes and say, I want to put in an irrigation meter, they're going to say, you need to go to Metro Water. If I were to say, I want to dig up some trees, they're going to say, you need to get a tree removal permit.
If you're commercial.
But in this case, he said, I'm going to build a concrete pad, but what didn't happen is, well, you need to go see if you apply, or you need to apply for an infill permit if you're 800 square feet or more.
They didn't say how big a one, they just said how deep a one.
and out of fairness, I will say, and maybe it's because of my background as a construction attorney, I have had many cases where you can't rely solely on permit submissions and others. You have to follow all applicable law, notwithstanding whatever you hear from Metro or some other authority having jurisdiction associated with permits. So my background may make me a little less inclined for this to be a more persuasive argument than others. Even so, I don't love a precedence where we are leaving an impervious pad in a floodway and saying, well, if we throw enough mitigation at it, we'll feel comfortable. I personally still don't see an undue hardship, but I do understand. I really appreciate hearing the perspective from my commissioners on this one as well, but that's kind of where I stand on this.
The difference, I think, in this one in my mind is, if I understand it correctly, if we rule today that no, it has to come out, you just have to take it out and revegetate it to stabilize the disturbance. The win, I think, here is that if we let a relatively small pad in the scheme of the area around it stay, we get more mitigation to help to improve something that otherwise would never really have the requirement to be improved. And I do think that is a little bit more of a win than saying that we have to remove the pad and not have any ability to gain anything else from it.
I understand that. And I understand kind of their sort of request for exceptional hardship. If they were coming to us saying, I want to build again, this is to me a recreational pad, it's a pickleball court. The only reason it's coming before us is because we're claiming it's a parking pad right now, which I question whether that is truly the use of this. I think in general, based on my experience, we would say no. The reason that we are looking at this is simply because of the circumstances as to how we got here.
Yeah, now that I sit on this side of the table, I wish latches did apply to the government. So.
I'll make a motion to approve on the condition that they work with staff to delineate the mitigation that's approximately midway up the adjacent 4223 property to create a buffer in that triangular section.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, second, and is there any discussion?
Are we also requiring the cistern that was proposed to capture the first inch of rainfall on that impervious area?
We do need to add that. Well, it's going to be as shown.
Including the no-mow. Oh, one more thing, sorry. What about the no-mow? Do you want to add that to your motion?
I wasn't going to add it to the north. I was gonna, that's part of the buffer that's being established, but I was not going to add that along to the north. If everybody else would like that, then that's okay. But with the way that the topo goes to the south towards the triangle, I don't think it's okay.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, the owner knows the proximity to the creek, and while it may not be required, there's a lot of benefits to it, and to think about how he's managing his property. And I think it would be something that we would probably highly recommend. The more that you can establish the vegetation and have a thicker vegetation, I think it's going to be a win for him. But I don't know that we have to require it today, but certainly would recommend him.
I understand and agree.
And then I'm sure our inspectors of Metro Water would also visit the site on occasion to ensure that the intended use is the intended use that we're talking about today. So,
in my mind, they're creating a buffer state. I don't know if it is an official buffer, so I'm not thinking that there needs to be all the signage, but it does need to, or unless others think that there needs to be.
I think for future ownership and those kind of pieces, in order to preserve that no-mow buffer, that we should have a sign.
However,
Otherwise,
maybe
it's gonna get
can we
mowed.
accomplish it with recording in the long-term maintenance plan that's required by this, with the cistern, documenting the buffer on that, so it's a recorded document for future purchasers? Because they're gonna, if they just bought this house and they're doing all this, they're gonna live there for a while, and that sign is probably gonna not be there in 20 years when they sell it.
Or they may get their UNO and sell it, who knows? I think signage in general, I know we get a lot of requests for not putting it up, but I think things change often, and whoever's mowing the lawn next time, maybe a different crew or whatever, I think generally we need to make a practice of requiring them more because I think things just change so frequently that.
So one sign at the midpoint on the northern boundary?
Yeah.
You okay with that?
I would like to request as well, if the cistern does go forward, we do discuss some means of anchoring, because putting a large object in the floodway is usually not conducive to it staying there.
It'll just be a
It's
holding
subsurface.
tank.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll just be a holding tank subsurface with all electrical or all pumps or anything sucking the water outside the floodway.
Correct. And where is that water being discharged to?
Irrigation.
It is going to be for irrigation? Correct. Okay.
I'd also like to note that, I am concerned about precedent on this, and if it had not been the issue with the zoning, situation,
Change my mind.
would probably, vote differently on this. I think it's a unique situation just because of bad information on both sides of the applicant, or the owners and their contractor not providing enough information to codes about what they were really doing, and then also codes not routing it for appropriate approvals.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'd ask for some help from our Metro Water Services staff to make the zoning help desk aware of this case. Ms. Shepherd should know. She's listed here in this email, so we don't find ourselves in this position again.
So Tara, one last piece of advice before you exit. Does somebody else amend my motion to add the one sign? Is that the appropriate way to document it?
You can amend your own motion. You have a first and a second.
I'll make a motion to amend my initial motion to add one sign at the midpoint on the
That's
northern
fine.
boundary.
Okay, that's,
Thanks.
well, we never voted on the first one, but,
Right.
okay. All right, so, great, all right.
Make a motion, vote on the motion as amended.
Yeah, so ask for a second on the amended motion. Okay, and then, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
One opposed. Ms. Simpson is opposed. Okay, all right,
Thank you all for your time.
great, thank you. All right. Ms. Hayes, it's 9:30. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
I don't have anything further.
Okay, all right, 1 hour.
Thank you all.
That's pretty good, folks. Thank you all, and meeting adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.